Hugh, thank you very much. Yes, let's pick up on some of the points you've been discussing there. In the studio with me are Tom Harwood from the Young Conservatives and also Dawn Foster, Guardian columnist. Good to have you with us. What part do you think young voters and young activists have played in these local elections, Tom?
I think young activists and voters have played just as big a part as everyone else. I think so often a lot of the commentariat seeks to define young voters as some kind of odd species, completely different from the average voter. And really, we're just as motivated by how low our council tax is and how good our services are as everyone else.
But Labour, Dawn, saying that they feel perhaps they could have done more in terms of getting young voters out.
Yeah, definitely. I think Labour's big problem here was actually mobilising more people to come out and vote. A lot of people did come out, but for instance in Wandsworth, 141 more young voters could have seen Wandsworth Council go to Labour, which 18 months ago was unthinkable. So I think it's it's a case of convincing more young people to come out and vote, and we are seeing more people come out and vote. And I think that getting people involved in activism, getting their friends involved, is playing a huge part in that for Labour. And the Conservatives need to worry about the fact that their voters are aging and Labour's getting younger.
On that point, Tom, do you think there is a sort of a strong group of younger Conservatives coming through to, sort of eventually take the place of those older voters?
On that point, I'd say that young people in general aren't as politically motivated as people tend to think we are. I mean, most young people still aren't as rabidly engaged on either side as often is portrayed. Labour flooded Wandsworth and indeed Westminster and many central London councils with activists, hundreds of Momentum activists. They threw the kitchen sinks at these places, and seats and councils simply didn't fall. And that's because people really know the services that they're being delivered by Conservative councils are delivering for them.
Dawn, what's Labour going to do about mobilising the younger vote, and do you think it's done enough in this election to say to its voters and would-be Labour voters that actually this party could form the next government?
I think it is doing pretty well. I think that it's slightly disappointing that Labour didn't do as well as they hoped. We could have got Wandsworth, we could have, gotten a few more seats elsewhere. But actually, if this was replicated today in the general election, we'd actually see 12 more Labour MPs and 12 few Conservatives. I think there's been a big consolidation in the past 2 years of the UKIP vote, so I think it'll be really interesting what happens after that. I think that from now on, we know which UKIP voters were Tories and which ones were Labour, and now it will fall to Labour to really, really push that up, bring in younger people, which is under 45s at the moment.
And just as a supplementary point to that, do you think it's suffered a bit because its message on the type of Brexit that it supports hasn't been distinct enough, because clearly there are different views within the party, just as there are in the Conservative Party?
I don't think so at all. I think that people aren't really that motivated about Brexit. They care about the economy, they care about health, and Conservative voters care about that as much as Labour. I think it's really, really overplayed how much of a role Brexit has in these local elections. And I think Labour have been very clever in their ambiguity about Brexit, but I think it's really not that much of an issue. People care more about the economy, they care more about schools and the NHS, whether they're a Labour voter or a Tory voter.
Well, that being said, whilst clearly Brexit didn't play as big a role as it might have done in places like central London, what we did see was huge Conservative gains in really Leave voting parts of Middle England. And it might be that Labour's more ambiguous stance is turning off voters who perhaps a year ago were more willing to back Labour and now see them drifting closer and closer to what's often termed as a soft Brexit, or in some cases no Brexit. And a lot of Labour voters might be increasingly concerned about that.
OK, Tom Harwood, Dawn Foster, thank you both very much for your time. It's back to you in the studio, Hugh.
Anita, thanks very much. Thanks to your guests as well.